In the next edition of Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch, a radioactive bat is discovered as the strangeness of the place is on display as ranch owner Dwayne Ollinger's son Chad Ollinger stumbles onto the dead bat. It looks like it died of fright. His backup is geologist Eric Drummond, who is radioed for help. In TV shows as exclusive clip below, the men investigate the bat's remains, and Eric surmises that the creature had lesions and looks to have died from something systemic versus an attack. The strangest aspect of the bat corpse is that the lesions look like radiation burns, which prompt Eric to get a meter to scan over the body of the bat, and sure enough, the radiation detector begins pinging to the point where the two back away, and Eric who will not pick it up or let Chad touch it. What could have created radiation poisoning for this bat? Eric Drummond discusses his theories with Chad as they examine the remains. Chad was first on the scene, and he radios for Eric to come and see what he discovered. He says, "Man, I found something gnarly. Get over here as fast as you can where we did the magnetometer." Eric arrives and sees the bat, as Chad points out the spots on the bat. Eric immediately does the math and says, "They look like lesions. It doesn't look like any one thing just killed it. It looked like a disease of some sort." Drummond goes to his vehicle to get the radiation detector device and returns. He tells Chad, "I know this might sound kind of weird, but let's give this guy a check for radioactivity." Drummond explains that bats live in caves, plain and simple. He adds, "So seeing these weird lesions on the bat, I started wondering if the cave that the bat came from had radiation in it, just like the cavern." Even though he is not a veterinarian, he is educated enough to spot what radiation poisoning can look like on an animal or human. The meter detects large amounts of radiation on the bat, and the two back away. Drummond says, "Yeah, I don't even want to touch the freaking thing." In TV shows as exclusive interview, Drummond was effusive about his fellow Blind Frog Ranch castmates. Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch airs Fridays at 10 p.m. ET/PT on Discovery Channel. Deep in the high desert of eastern Utah, nestled in a remote valley shrouded in folklore and ancient unease, Blind Frog Ranch has always resisted easy explanation. Over the years, tales of hidden treasure, unexplained phenomena, and strange energy fluctuations have made the 160-acre property the subject of endless speculation. But now, a new chapter is unfolding, one more bizarre than anything uncovered so far. What began as a routine exploration in one of the ranch's cave systems turned into an unprecedented discovery. Chad Ollinger and Eric Drummond, two of the ranch's principal investigators, stumbled upon something that has stunned the scientific community and reignited questions about what truly lies beneath the surface of this infamous land. A colony of bats, living in complete darkness, and, astonishingly, radiating detectable levels of ionizing radiation. A descent into dark neither journey began with the latest phase of the ranch's ongoing efforts to map its vast underground network. Eric, a geologist with decades of mining and cave exploration experience, had been following a series of fractures traced along the ranch's western ridge. With ground-penetrating radar indicating a large void, the team decided to access the new chamber via an old mineshaft believed to be collapsed after several days of clearing debris and reinforcing old timber supports. The tunnel opened into a narrow corridor of limestone, slicked with mineral-rich condensation. The air was warmer than expected and thick with the pungent odor of ammonia. With flashlights sweeping the walls, Chad and Eric pressed deeper into the uncharted hollow, eventually emerging into a chamber larger than a football field. There, suspended from the ceiling and clustered along jagged stone outcroppings, they found them. Thousands of small, black-winged creatures that shimmered oddly under UV light. Bats, yes, but not any ordinary species. The radiation puzzle minutes of entering the cavern, Jaeger counters carried in their backpacks began chirping erratically. At first, Eric suspected background radiation from surrounding rocks, common in areas with natural uranium deposits. But the levels kept climbing, surpassing thresholds deemed safe for prolonged exposure. The source wasn't the rock, it was the bats. Initial readings taken from a distance showed individual creatures emitting levels of radiation equivalent to low-grade medical isotopes. Closer sampling, performed with appropriate shielding and containment equipment, confirmed that the creatures were, in some form, radioactive, not contaminated, but possibly internally producing the radiation. The implications of such a phenomenon were staggering. No known species of bat radiation emission is unheard of in vertebrates. These were not bats as known by science. They were something else. Theories and speculation back at the ranch's main lab, analysis of tissue and guano samples only deepened the mystery. Isotopic profiling suggested traces of polonium and thorium, elements naturally present in the earth, but rarely found concentrated in living tissue. There was no sign that the animals were sick, mutated, or suffering any ill effects. If anything, they appeared more robust and aggressive than typical bat species. The team consulted with radiation biologists and zoologists under strict confidentiality agreements. Some hypothesized that the bats might have adapted to an underground ecosystem saturated with radioactive minerals. Over time, they may have evolved a way to store or utilize these elements for biological processes, perhaps even for communication or navigation. Others floated wilder ideas. Ancient bioengineering by a lost civilization, a natural nuclear reaction deep beneath the ranch, or even unknown symbiotic organisms residing within the bats themselves. Without more data, no theory could be confirmed, and most scientists, fearful of professional ridicule, refused to go on record. Blind Frog Ranch's history of the unexplained for those familiar with Blind Frog Ranch. The idea of radioactive bats seems almost par for the course ranch has long been a magnet for the strange. From odd metallic artifacts and sealed stone boxes found buried in shafts, to lights in the sky and electromagnetic anomalies, the land has never behaved like normal property. Stories from local tribes speak of forbidden zones and underground rivers that can swallow entire herds. Ranch workers have reported lost time, inexplicable voices, and machinery failing in specific locations without cause. More recently, the ranch's drilling efforts were repeatedly halted by collapsing tunnels, inexplicable flooding, and bizarre structural formations that defied standard geology. Some believe that the subterranean world beneath the ranch isn't just rich in minerals, it may hold secrets predating recorded history. The discovery of the bats adds another surreal layer to the enigma, especially given their location near a suspected collapsed chamber that, according to ancient maps and oral legends, was once a sacred site. What if the bats are guardians of something deeper? The ecological risk hile the find is captivating. It has also raised alarms. Radioactive animals, regardless of origin, could pose a risk to nearby ecosystems. There is growing concern that the bats may not be confined to the cavern. Cave systems in the region are vast and often interconnected. If these creatures migrate or interact with local species, they could introduce contamination, or worse, spread a biological adaptation no one fully understands. Already, a ranch dog exposed to one of the creatures during the recovery of guano samples began exhibiting erratic behavior, hyperaggression, and severe tissue inflammation around the eyes and mouth. It had to be quarantined and later euthanized. The incident was not made public. In response, Chad and Eric have begun working with environmental agencies under a non-disclosure framework, hoping to determine the extent of the bat's territory. Drones and motion-triggered cameras have been deployed, but tracking a population of flying mammals in total darkness is an enormous challenge. Government interest and silent visitors. Shortly after the discovery, unmarked vehicles were spotted along the county road leading to the ranch. Aerial surveillance over the site increased, with helicopters hovering at unusual hours. Men in plain clothes, claiming to be from geological survey teams, requested access to the ranch's core drill logs, an odd request, given their limited scope. Some ranch insiders believe the government already knew something was buried under Blind Frog Ranch, something possibly related to old Cold War experiments or secret mining projects gone awry. The radioactive bats, in this theory, might be unintended byproducts of past human interference rather than natural evolution. Others lean toward a more ancient explanation. Utah, after all, is riddled with Native American legends of star people and forbidden zones. What if these creatures are remnants of a time when the earth was not entirely ruled by human beings? The road ahead, despite the fear and uncertainty, Chad and Eric remain committed to unraveling the truth. Their work is driven not only by curiosity, but also a sense of responsibility. If these creatures are a danger to the outside world, containment is paramount. If they are survivors of a deeper mystery, biological or even metaphysical, they could hold keys to questions humanity hasn't yet learned to ask.